Good morning, good morning. It is about 6:22 right now on Friday morning. Today is Friday the 13th. It is December 13th, and I'm here doing back-to-back book reviews of two Dresden File books from Jim Butcher. And that's just because I was delaying so long and even doing my notes, and it was piling up on this little pile I have next to me on my desk of things to do, which I've got plenty. I just have to learn to do them. So, again, I'm not even trying to go on my regular PC and do the camera because I haven't bought a new computer in one day, so I'm not even going to try to go through any glitches or what have you. So, yes, if you see my eyes wandering up in this direction, those are my notes. I'm not, about to stroke out or something like that. But and I also do understand that, yes, if you've listened to the last book review I did on the prior book in this series and this one today, I am, in fact, still wearing the same t shirt because I work from home and don't go anywhere. So, that being said, let's move on to today's episode. Again, this is another edition of Joe's Book Review. It's my 49th installment in this little series on my page here. And I think I've been doing this for about 2 years. And again, it's a matter of me discussing books that I've just read that I wanted to read that are on my bookshelf or I get at the library or someone gives me. Okay. I've already done the previous 6 books in this series, and now I'm continuing the thread with the 7th. So, without further ado, here we go. Jim Butcher has Deadbeat. This is his novel of Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, who was a wizard for hire in Chicago. He's also a private eye. Okay. A wizard detective that you can actually find in the Yellow Pages. And no one takes that seriously. He really doesn't have very many clients to begin with. So, he's kind of strapped for cash when you're living even in the outskirts of Chicago, or as they call it, Chicagoland. He gets most of his money when he works with the police when they have weird homicides or whatnot, and yada yada, it goes on from there. So we've got some serious events in this edition, in this installment. So we're at 515 pages, so it's pretty meaty for a novel to begin with. And just to set the scene a little bit, a few books ago there were some events that Harry Dresden kind of sparked off a war by himself, which involves, two vastly huge areas in the world of these novels. He had gotten humiliated into killing a vampire of the Red Court of Vampires while he was a guest at one of their functions. Now, he was actually given an actual invitation to join. And guest status has its own level of meaning in these books. It actually affords you certain, luxuries or truces or what have you. And the fact that Harry Dresden is kind of aligned and is a member of the White Council of Wizards, which is a ruling faction of like mages, wizards, warlocks, magicians, whatever. So when he got this invitation, he's kind of like instilled with a truce under like the rules of the Accords. You come here, you will not be harmed. And in turn, you promise not to harm anyone else. But they were goading him the whole freaking time he was there. They were actually trying to threaten his girlfriend that was with him at the time. So, again, the Accords say, don't start nothing, there won't be nothing. Well, of course, Harry starts something. So it's been all out war ever since. This is like 3 books ago between the chaos of the Red and Black Courts of Vampires and the Wizards of the White Council ever since. So he's living with that ongoing atrocity, and both from being randomly attacked by those courts and also from internally because the White Council blames him for causing this war. So it's not a good time to be Harry. Okay. Now, in the prior book, we realized that one of his friends, who happens to be a White Court vampire, is actually his half brother. And Harry's been an orphan almost his whole life. His mother died during childbirth. Father was a stage magician, but died when he was like 6. So he's been going down the orphan and orphanage route. And he's got no family connections his entire life. And based upon the events at the end of the last book, his brother, Thomas Wraith, has been booted out of the White Court. And he has no means to earn a living, can't support himself. He's been shacking up with Harry for, a couple months now, for the majority of the time. And, that can get on anyone's nerves, just having someone around a lot. Also, for Harry himself, in an attempt to kill one of the queens of the Black Court, because he was just annoyed with being attacked all the time, Harry had summoned up internally this version of Hellfire and used it to attack the vampire nest and burn her to a crisp and say, boom, one queen is gone, very powerful, off the board. And even the vampires had some mortal minions, and they even used some like napalm flamethrowers to try to go against him. So in that battle, Harry severely burned his hand. It's like all but useless to him now, to the point that even the doctors wanted to amputate it. But he just couldn't live with that. He goes, it's my hand. I'm not going to let you take it away. So now our hero is crippled. He has a severe phobia of fire almost. And that was once his everyday weapon and ally. But now he won't even magically light candles anymore. He lights his fireplace with matches and a big box of matches, which, given he only has one hand really to use, that gets pretty difficult. So all that being said of just a little what has happened before, we get into the new installment of the Dresden Files. So our hero starts out just slowly recovering with his hand, with his roommate and whatnot, and his roommate, Thomas Wraith, he came from money, and he's got no money to support himself. And he can't even do basic things like cleaning up after himself, doing dishes, his laundry, whatnot, because he lived with maids taking care of and servants doing that for him his whole life. And now nesting with Harry is just driving Harry up a wall. New brother and all, fantastic. But dirty dishes, laundry on the floor, a conga line of beautiful women that Thomas Wraith feeds on, their essence being a vampire, that can even grate on Harry's nerves. And then Harry gets an invitation. So he's kind of dealing with all this domestic problems. Oh, what the hell is this? Come meet me at a graveyard kind of stuff. And he goes there. And sure enough, Mavra, who he thought he killed in the last book, is there. Turns out he killed a dupe. And she blackmails Harry. She has photos of his CPD friend, Karen Murphy. Chicago's Special Investigations Unit, which gives him a lot of money for his consulting services. And Karen is one of the people that helped Harry hunt down the nest of black vampires. And she's been photographed during that raid. So no one's going to believe that she was out there hunting and killing vampires. The photos look like she's just killing people. Indigents, ordinary people. So basically, Mavra's like, listen, I leak this. She loses her status among the PD. She goes to prison. Her life's over. One of your allies is off the board. Or, here's a simple but vague task. You bring me the word of Kemmler in 3 days, which, by the way, will be like Halloween or something like that, and we're all good. So, that's his task for the novel, and his motivation on top of that. So, now you get that common, what the hell is the word of Kemmler? And where the hell would he even start going to find it? And this starts the thread of what Deadbeat is all about. Now we're going to bring in to this whole world that Harry inhabits necromancy. Okay? That's a new aspect that we haven't gotten to as readers before, but have existed, and now we're getting introduced to it. And I'll tell you, the way this author, Jim Butcher, brings these different elements into his world building is pretty impressive. And if you're not sure what I mean, this is the 7th installment, right? In the first book, Stormfront, you got introduced to the magical world. Okay, magic's how it works, potions, and all have spells. Okay, how they use nature and energies around us, almost like the Force in Star Wars in a way. And also introduce you to like the fairy realm called the Never Never, which is just like one little standard deviation off of ours. In the second book, Full Moon, you get to introduce to werewolves, and like 4 different types of werewolves at that too, expanding the genre. The third one, The Grave Peril, we're dealing with nightmares, ghosts, vampires, specifically the Red Court, and it even ties in some Christianity and how religion is related to magic in this world and how it isn't related as well. When you got to Summer Night in the 4th book, you start learning more about that fairy realm, the Never Never, and there's a winter and summer court out there, and they've got 3 queens each, and they got a knight for each queen. It's just, and there's more insight also into how this whole White Council operates and how they even view Harry. So you're expanding slowly but surely. Death Masks, the 5th novel, introduced us to a new realm of baddies called the Denarians. Hope I said that right, Denarians. They're like fallen angels, and they're attached to the 30 pieces of denari silver that Judas Iscariot got for betraying Jesus Christ. So you get more Christianity and religion into how it fits into this world. Oh, and by the way, one of the things he has to investigate and find is the Shroud of Turin. So it just expands more and more. And even the last book, Blood Rites, the White Court of Vampires is really delved into. We didn't see them too often. We always got the red and the black, but then the white was now, front and center. And you also learned about curses and the magic behind them. So the world just keeps on getting more wondrous as we go on. So now, to piggyback onto the world building, it takes us deeper and deeper into the mythos and the settings as we now learn about the blackest of magic, the ability to deal with the magic of death and necromancy. Okay, pretty cool. Now, with necromancy, the White Council of Wizards is hard-pressed, dead set against it. Okay, because whereas magically typically deals with the powers and energies of life, necromancy deals with the powers and energies of death. And that type of magic corrupts, and basically, because of the vast amount of power that comes with tapping into that source, it really can corrupt. And there was a magician back in the day by the name of Kemmler, is one of the main reasons that the White Court is so dead set against this. All right? Because it seems back in the early 60s, Kemmler just really set things off. And even some of the greatest queens in that land of Fae have called him, a madman and a monster. So you're getting that sense of what this one person was who specialized in this one now forbidden magic, so to speak. So at the time, the White Council had ganged up and just narrowly was narrowly able to defeat Kemmler. Okay. And he had written a bunch of books trying to spread necromancy and how to throughout the world. And the White Council tracked down almost every single one of them and just burned them. Because they do not want that knowledge going to his fledglings and have more of these things to deal with as time went on. And he had written 6 or 7 books, so it took him a while to burn them all. But it turns out that this word of Kemmler that Harry has to find actually is an 8th unknown book. It wasn't really distributed too much too, because they got to him before that happened. But this had a real true nuts and bolts with the how-to necromancy and how to bring about almost a godlike power. And here we have a Queen of the Black Court wants this book from Harry. So, doesn't sound too good. Now, one of the things that's amazing also about Deadbeat is Harry's got to go up against so many factions of those who want this supreme death magic and become a god. And one after another, he's got to fight against these people. And sometimes the next one is more powerful than the one he just met before that. There's three main areas. Okay. One, you've got this dude named Gravane. Okay. He's a past apprentice of Kemmler, and he's very good at necromancy. Okay. The next, you have someone called Cal. Always has the hood over his head. You really can't see him too much. And he's also a past apprentice of Kemmler. But he's not alone. He's got an associate with him, another necromancer by the name of Kumari. So when he fights them, he fights two, not one, like he does with Gravane and his zombies. They even introduced a third faction. This is the Capio Corpus, aka the Corpse Taker. Okay. Again, another apprentice of Kemmler. And she even pals around with a powerful ghoul by the name of Li Zhan. And all three attack him throughout the book. Harry can hardly get a breath, a slice of pizza, whatever to rest, because it's one after another. Which makes for great reading for us, truly. So, besides Mavra, all three of these factions are looking for the word of Kemmler because they want to be the next Kemmler. And especially because Halloween night is only days away. Because in this world, Halloween is when the walls between the magical realms of here, the realm of man and earth, to the realm of the Fae and the Never Never are at their thinnest. And magic can be cast with a greater effect and greater ability on that day versus other days during our calendar year. But in all this, what's so special about this word of Kemmler? Fruit punch. Well, it turns out with this book, you're able to do an invocation or a summoning, if you will, of someone known as the Earl King. And this Fae is one of the most powerful in the Never Never. All right. He doesn't truly belong to the court of summer or winter per se, and he's kind of known as Wild Fae because of that. But particularly, he's the master of the Wild Hunt. And from what I've been learning, the Wild Hunt actually is a mythology that's known in very many different Norse religions and what have yous. That it's a concept that can be familiar to you, or this could be introduction to you, whatever the case may be. I personally had heard of it before, but I liked seeing it invoked in this book as well. And the Wild Hunt itself is almost it's a gathering of wild beasts, the strongest predators ever conceived. Most importantly, it's the dead ghosts of those predators that have been amassed together. The dead ghosts? Are there alive ghosts? I mean, I'm not sure if dead ghosts is a thing. Let's just say, never mind. They're the specters of the strongest predators ever seen. And when the Earl King kind of calls up the Wild Hunt, it's like the ride of the Valkyries. They just decimate everything in their path. And this in turn then creates more ghosts from everyone that they've killed. And the necromancers can tap into that for more spectral ghost energy, and it fuels their power. And by the way, when this whole thing goes down, if it ever happens, most of Chicago will be killed. Because it seems like it's going to take place in Chicago. And it's just the event that calls on the power will set forth a wave, will kill a lot of people in Chicago, which will then fuel the power, and even, it'll just be more so a larger thing. And it'll just perpetuate the events even further. So what we're talking about is someone wants the Earl King and his Wild Hunt, set them loose, a lot of death, a lot of power comes, we get the big dark power, which then will get out a wave, which then will kill even more, which will then feed the power. And you see how this cycle continues. Thus, the godlike ability to amass such a great power in whoever is the one that gets to set this thing off. And as I've said, this installment is just jam-packed with lore, with action, and most times, Harry just getting the ever-loving bejesus kicked out of him. But we get to sit on the edge of our seats wondering, how is our main character going to get out of this event? You know? It's great stuff. It truly is great stuff. And that's just how the pacing goes with this one, you know. Harry finds the thinnest thread to start his investigation. He actually goes and, visits like a polka enthusiast who works in the city morgue, because he's kind of like done some evocation of himself, and he kind of found areas amongst Chicago that had like a massing or a nexus of dark energies. And he's found that there's people that have been killed in those areas. So maybe the bodies can evoke a clue. And one of them had gone to the morgue, so he goes to the morgue to talk to his old friend. His name is Butters, to maybe he can find something in this corpse that might give him another lead. And of course, while he's doing that, other of these baddies have the same idea. We get introduced to the first one, Gravane, who's there with a cadre of zombies as well. And you get magic, a showdown, taunting, escape. It's a great novel. What can I say? So you even see the investigation continue afterwards. Like he's trying to figure out, what is this word? Where can I find it? Yada, yada. And we actually get introduced to a new site in Chicago, Box Bookstore. And he goes there because he's got a lot of old books, and some of them might be magic texts, in like a little caged up back room. And while Harry goes there, we even run into a romantic interest as well, of course, in the back room. And Harry gets to leave with one of these books, kind of Kemmler too. Not the word, but something else that hadn't been burned. And a little exposition later, and then boom, another attack. This time being introduced to that Cal and Kumari once he steps out into the street. Another interesting scene. And the investigation will continue, just to continue the synopsis. In the same way that Harry found, to use some magic and find Dark Nexus and got to the morgue, he actually goes to other areas of Chicago and finds like new murders along the way. Some with the CPD already on the scene, and some they haven't gotten there yet. So in this part of the book, you kind of get into that investigator mode of Harry Dresden, trying desperately to put together the pieces of the background, making storytelling and presenting it to us so we can follow the threads. And in typical private eye fashion. So for those who enjoy reading detective fictions and novels of that nature, you get that aspect of this as well. And I do. So on my bookshelf, I have a lot of different inspectors. I got, what's his name? Sherlock Holmes. I got his complete things over there. There's even some Hercule Poirot, that kind of thing. And I'm sure I said that word wrong. And this brings the investigation back to the morgue, where they actually finally do find the special thing in the body that will give him a tip to the next thing. And then there's another, trip to the bookstore to find more lore. And then, boom, enter the third section of bad guys. You get the corpse taker and Lijan the ghoul. Just another battle for us to enjoy as we flip these pages as fast as we can. But this one's interesting because Harry kind of loses this battle. And it's a nail biter. It doesn't quite work out the way he wanted to towards the ending of the encounter, which is just great. And again, I'm trying to be non-spoiler, so I'm going to skip a section ahead again, because now Harry needs more information, and we get to delve more into the magical realms where, we get more exposition from the author. Harry has to go to a remote lake area and decides to call on his godmother, Leonanshi, which I probably also pronounced wrong here. She's one of the queens of the Winter Court, a little fairy godmother to Harry, actually. And at times, she kind of wants to kill Harry, or at the very least, enslave him and make him at her beck and call. but every now and again she could be useful for information. And these can be some pretty intense scenes when he deals with his godmother here. But so he casts his little invocation, but she's not the one who responds. Queen Mab herself makes an appearance to Harry, and she's almost like literally the most powerful fae in these winter and summer courts. And winter being the more evil of the two, so to speak. Because it turns out that Leonanshi has been a little on the naughty side, so Mab put her into like a fairy prison until she learns to behave. However, since Leonanshi arrives when Harry calls, and Mab is the one who ensnares her, it's now up to Mab to be obligated to follow Leonanshi's obligations. So when Harry calls Leonanshi, he gets Mab. And I just love it when these rules of the arcane are introduced to us. They're amazing. So what do we get out of this? Even in the Never Never, they fear necromancy to an extent. And if even one of the disciples of Kemmler get to invoke this kind of power, they would essentially be a new dark god. And there would be nothing to stop them after they achieve this. And even in the Never Never, they're afraid of someone actually getting this. But again, in order to achieve this feat, Harry learns through her, they need the word of Kemmler. And Harry still doesn't even know where to find it. So what's our hero to do? I mean, he needs to get home, talk to the mortician, see if he can figure out what's going on. But what's this? Our hero gets home only to find Gravane and his zombies at his heels. And then we get this insane action sequence where their undead are just bombarding our hero in his basement. Now, he's got a lot of these magical defenses, magical wards all around his home. But they can only last so long. So they just keep pounding up against it, trying to weaken it down. And when you read this, you get that mad scramble internally of what they're going to do next, and bit by bit, the wards are coming down and they're faltering by this onslaught of hundreds of zombies. And it's only him, the cowardly mortician, and his half-brother of the White Court of Vampires. The stakes are high and the tensions are high. And the way they're holding off, it's almost like in the Lord of the Rings movies, the Battle of Helm's Deep, where they're sheltering for 3 days until something can save them and doing their best to repel it, but they can't do too much because they're completely outnumbered and practically have no hope. And well, dear listeners, I'm going to leave this right there with you, because to see what actually occurs, you got to kind of read this by yourselves. It's just that interesting. But even in the aftermath, we obviously know that Harry doesn't die, because there's like 17 books in the series, and this is only number 7. Harry gets to finally rest up a little bit and deal with the repercussions of the battle. Because he's literally been going from the frying pan to the fryer to the oil fryer to the grill. I mean, and a body can only take so much. And here it gets even more interesting, because now that he finally falls asleep and goes to rest for just a short period of time, we get to see Harry deal with his inner turmoil. See, he's been living with this deep, dark force inside of him for like most of his life. In fact, it's one of those things that consumes the White Council with a little bit of fear of Harry, because if he ever decides to tap into it and invoke it, he may possibly become a formidable evil. And then there's the events of the book Death Masks, which is about 2 books ago, when a portion of the essence of a spirit of one of the fallen had entered into him. A fallen angel by the name of Lassiel had imbued one of the 30 pieces of silver from Judas Iscariot's betrayal. And Harry picked up this coin, and it branded his hand with her sigil. But then a piece of her got inside him. And even when he rests, he has this internal fight on his hands, trying to resist the temptations of another being. And she's trying to take over Harry while simultaneously amping up his powers so she can, like, come back. So even when he's at rest, he's still fighting for his very being, for his very essence of self. There truly is no rest for the weary when it comes to Harry Dresden. So, just to wrap things up here, here's a high level of what the rest of this novel entails. Harry finds the word of Kemmler, as you knew he probably would. And now everyone's going to attack him for it. All right? He evokes the Earl King himself with a last-ditch effort to think maybe if I have him, they can't use him. And of course, that doesn't go too well. And he loses him. Harry gets to ride on a ghost dinosaur for a while, which makes fully sense when you get to those sections of the book. And it's actually kind of pretty cool when you see him use it in action. They bring in a lot of these wardens of the White Council because they give you more information how the White Council's losing this war with huge loss of life. And the wardens are their foot soldiers, their assassins, or what have you, that help them out. And they're dwindling from like 200 to 30 while this is all happening off screen. But even a few that are remaining are coming to Harry because this necromancy is no joke. Everyone's got to be front and center to deal with it. We even get Harry beaten in one of his fights during the battle. And he's literally being torn apart by some of these baddies. Lay down on a stone slab and practically gutted by a blade in the style of like Hostel, if you've ever seen those movies or are aware of them. There's even a few scenes in here with this character of Bob. So Bob is a spirit of knowledge that helps Harry out, usually inhabits a crystal skull in Harry's basement, and helps him out with investigations and how to make potions and histories and whatnot. In fact, one of the previous scenes in the book, Bob tells Harry that he used to be in the service of Kemmler for some time way back in the past. But he intentionally forgot everything that happened during there because it was just too bad for him. And Harry even tries to force him to remember, and his orange eyes turn blue, and he just goes apeshit on Harry. So later on, we get a part 2 of that scene in this as well. So it is very, very interesting stuff. So I'm just going to say, there you have it. All in all, of all the novels in this series so far, this one is truly loaded. So many foes that you get to see him fighting against, winning, losing, different types of magic, and even the foes against each other and how he's going to deal with them because maybe he doesn't want one to beat the other for some reason. They even, tie in a couple loose ends in the overall story that's being created here. They even make more progress in it as well. And I can't stress enough how much I would like you to add this to your reading library. If you're into this type of fiction, I believe you wouldn't be sorry. Okay? But then again, there are a number of books that I enjoy that others have read, and they simply have not found out of it what I've taken out of it. Maybe it's them. Maybe it's me. Who knows? But that's all I have for you today. I tried to keep this as short as I could, but I'm already at 34 minutes, so to speak. I hope this has helped you in some fashion. I will definitely see you here again soon. Luckily, I've now caught up on all the books I've read recently that I've got a video out there for. More coming soon, trust me. But until that time, you keep reading, and cheers. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.